In a scientific world like today, the presence of conspiracy theories seems to run counter to the majority of people in many fields. Why do some people believe that the moon landing was faked? Why do many others believe that secret societies like the Illuminati control world events? Why do people believe that the Earth is flat? These questions are truly difficult to answer because they lie in the realm of perception and personal belief, with no fixed standard for evaluation. Conspiracy theories possess a special allure, compelling listeners to accept alternative explanations for some unclear events or phenomena. In today's video, we will explore the psychological factors contributing to the widespread and increasing belief in conspiracy theories. By delving into the motivations, analyzing examples, cognitive biases, and social influence, we may gain a deeper understanding of this phenomenon that continues to captivate minds worldwide. Get ready to join us in answering the question: how are conspiracy theories manipulating the world? First, a sincere thank you for your companionship and support. Don't forget to give Primitive Universe a like and subscribe to the channel right now to help it grow. We hope you will have a valuable 30 minutes with today's content. In the simplest terms, as with most discussions, we will begin with the question, what is a conspiracy theory? A conspiracy theory is understood as a natural human reaction to a chaotic world. They consist of stories that connect various events in a related way with facts that are unproven and unprovable. Conspiracy theories provide believers with a sense of understanding most events and phenomena in the world. Whenever faced with a complex event, a conspiracy theory usually explains it by attributing it to a small, secretive group with hidden malicious motives. Furthermore, conspiracy theories also provide a means to question authority and challenge the status quo. They create an opportunity to assert individual autonomy and critical thinking by seeking explanations alternative to the mainstream truth. Based on these premises, we can easily identify two main characteristics of conspiracy theories. First, they attempt to explain the origin of a major, unsolved event related to many different fields. For example, when the HIV epidemic first broke out, people often only heard about the disease through media descriptions, and when the source of the disease was still unknown, they fabricated all kinds of conspiracy theories surrounding it. Second, conspiracy theories romanticize a struggle between good and evil in the world, in which the government or secret societies often play the villain. Research shows that people tend to believe in conspiracy theories when they feel anxious or powerless. The most typical example is during times of political or economic instability. People can find solace in conspiracy theories that propose a clear villain or group to hold responsible for their difficulties. A question that many people always wonder is, why do people believe in conspiracy theories so much? The first answer to this relates to the cognitive biases that humans often have. Cognitive biases are considered mental shortcuts or patterns of thinking that deviate from rational judgment. These biases usually occur automatically and unconsciously, shaping how we process information. They influence our thoughts, beliefs, and actions, including our propensity to believe in conspiracy theories. Of course, this is only a general overview. I will show you more clearly the role of cognitive biases through a specific example: confirmation bias. Perhaps you have heard about confirmation bias. This psychological effect causes you to tend to interpret new evidence as confirmation of your existing belief or hypothesis. Typically, confirmation bias occurs when people try to synthesize facts and evidence to best fit their hypothesis. And even when presented with countless pieces of information, Those with confirmation bias will only select what aligns with their hypothesis and belief. To fully analyze confirmation bias, perhaps we need a separate video. In today's content, we will only examine the extent to which confirmation bias affects the belief in conspiracy theories. In a study published in 1987, participants were given information about a fictional disease and asked to identify related symptoms. The results showed that participants with a strong initial belief that the disease existed selectively sought and processed information that confirmed their preconceived notion. They focused more on symptoms that matched their belief and ignored contradictory evidence. This study proves that confirmation bias exists in many people and excludes no one. Therefore, the number of people who believe in conspiracy theories is also substantial. Social dynamics and psychological factors also influence whether someone believes in a conspiracy theory. Research shows that feelings of powerlessness, mistrust, and social alienation can increase a person's likelihood of pursuing belief in conspiracy theories. When individuals feel disconnected or marginalized, conspiracy theories provide a sense of belonging and a shared community that accepts their beliefs. This is because these theories often thrive in specific communities. Music in such closed spaces, beliefs are reinforced and amplified through social influence. When someone interacts with like-minded individuals who validate their beliefs, it strengthens their own belief in the conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories not only affect our personal well-being, but can also have far-reaching real-world consequences. This can also lead to dangerous outcomes. You can easily see that the rampant misinformation about vaccine safety, fueled by conspiracy theories, has contributed to lower vaccination rates and an increase in preventable diseases. In this way, conspiracy theories directly endanger public health and welfare. Similarly, conspiracy theories that deny climate change also hinder collective action and delay effective responses to the environmental crisis by spreading uncertainty and popularizing misinformation. The danger posed by conspiracy theories is becoming more widespread. But how significant is that danger really? Music. With such an abstract question, there is only one way to interpret it. We need to rely on reality. Delve into the analysis of major existing conspiracy theories to determine the terrible impact they cause. Let's start with the case that has the least direct impact on you and me. The theory that Americans never landed on the moon. The moon landing can be compared to humanity's invention of language and agriculture. They are both important milestones in human development history. Yet more than 50 years after humans achieved this feat, there is still a significant number of people who believe it was just a hoax created by the U.S. government. Their belief not only tramples on science and the contributions of the space travel industry to humanity, but is also completely absurd. The community that refuses to believe in the moon landing has its own arguments, which are still persuasive enough to build a large community. So what reasons lead people to believe the U.S. never put a man on the moon? The first thing to point out is that the timing of the moon landing was not ideal for the Americans. They chose a time when public confidence in the authorities was severely declining due to a series of major events. On the other side of the globe, the Russians achieved most of the space accomplishments during the space age. The space age itself began in 1957, with Russia successfully launching the first artificial satellite, Sputnik. It wasn't until 1962 that John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth, reviving hope for the United States in the space race. In the same year, President J.F. Kennedy addressed the nation about the plan to conquer the moon. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. The speech demonstrated the 35th president's belief in an era of science, and John Glenn's presence in Earth's orbit was a clear testament to his words. 1 month after J.F. Kennedy's speech, the Cuban Missile Crisis took place. The Earth came closer to the brink of nuclear war than ever before. The situation was extremely precarious. Exactly 1 year after the missile crisis, J.F. Kennedy was assassinated. Even when the CIA released investigative documents about Lee Harvey Oswald, the man accused of firing the shot that shook the world, people still did not believe he acted alone and that there was a power behind him. Americans lost faith. They questioned every piece of information the government provided, including the great human achievement of setting foot on the moon in 1969. Another unpleasant truth emerged. Wernher von Braun, the hero of America's space exploration programs, was a close missile advisor to Adolf Hitler. Furthermore, in the midst of an ongoing energy crisis, people were preoccupied with making ends meet and paid little attention to the remarkable human achievement in space. Later, a continuous chain of unfortunate events caused the American public's trust to recede. Before the Internet age, people usually entertained themselves by reading books. Although lacking the brevity and rapid dissemination of information, stories reeking of conspiracy theories still had a strong allure. The book We Never Went to the Moon by Bill Kaysing, which appeared in 1974, marked the first detailed and lengthy document discussing what many Americans were already suspecting. Kaysing was a technical writer for the Rocketdyne Missile Engineering Company in the 1950s, so his words were given considerable weight. Although Kaysing repeatedly stated that he knew nothing about missile technology, when he claimed that the moon landing video was filmed in a secret area within Area 51, people immediately believed him. A survey conducted in July 1970 indicated that 30% of Americans polled believed the moon landing was a hoax. A second survey conducted in 1976 showed that 28% of respondents believed the momentous event in human history was staged by the U.S. government. This result was a combination of two factors: Kaysing's book and the mentioned decline in trust in the government. Kaysing presented many arguments to convince readers that the moon landing was fake. Based on his reputation as an insider in missile technology, Kaysing claimed that most missile tests failed, making it impossible for the U.S. to develop a rocket capable of carrying humans to the moon. Moreover, he constantly emphasized that in the photos provided by NASA, there was absolutely no star visible. There are no stars in the photos. If they were taking pictures from the moon, there should be stars. Kaysing suggested that NASA's oversight in staging this scene accidentally created incredibly compelling evidence, enough to help him write an entire book. In reality, it is simply a physical phenomenon. Astronauts standing on the moon would be exposed to a large amount of sunlight from the sun. That light source makes the faint light from the stars virtually ineffective. When the brightness of the photos taken on the moon is increased, we immediately notice the difference, but it is clear that a few minor details like that are not enough to convince so many people that humans never set foot on the moon. Could Kaysing have provided more evidence? One of Kaysing's claims, and also one of the most widely publicized facts, is that the legendary director Stanley Kubrick, the mastermind behind the marvelous space work, 2001: A Space Odyssey, was the one who filmed the fake moon landing footage. In an effort to persuade readers that the Apollo 11 moon mission was not real, Kaysing also cited some photographs taken in Las Vegas. He claimed this was where our three heroes, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins, were partying and having fun while the whole world believed they were on the moon. In reality, the three astronauts and their management team were enjoying themselves in Vegas. Another undeniable piece of evidence is this photo. Kaysing used it to prove that the moon landing was just a large film set. In fact, this is Neil Armstrong 3 months before he embarked on the journey that changed humanity. Looking at the backdrop, the camera, and the dome, it's hard not to imagine this as a film set. Kaysing was not the only bright star in the sky of deception. There is another notable name, Ralph Rene. This man took the trouble to publish 2 books to support his belief. The first book was titled Mansell Lectures, later changed its name to The Last Skeptic of Science, because the Mensa organization forbade Rene from using their name on the cover of the book. The second book is what brought Rene to the peak of fame in the conspiracy community. It is called NASA Mooned America. It is still available on Amazon and contains many arguments similar to what Kaysing presented earlier. Ralph Rene's key evidence is this photo. He asserted that the 3 men returning from the moon could not look so sad. This is clearly the face of 3 deceivers who have to lie to the entire United States. However, from the same angle with the same people, we see a picture full of smiles, and Ralph Rene's trickery is revealed more clearly than ever. Both Bill Kaysing and Ralph Rene are no longer alive to serve as examples for the next generation, but the legacies that these 2 destructive men left behind remain. The number of people who believe the moon landing was fake has decreased significantly, but they now possess a platform for information dissemination unprecedented in history, the Internet. In the age of information technology, such content spreads quickly and unpredictably. The old nail-in-the-coffin evidence, even though debunked, spreads at a breakneck speed. Obviously, every time harmful information is shared, people will never attach the truth. There will only be photos accompanied by captions they fabricated themselves. And with just a little clarity, we can answer everything. Why don't the footprints on the moon and the shape of Neil Armstrong's boot match? Simply because Neil Armstrong wore a different outer boot when walking on the moon. There is no wind on the moon, so why is the flag waving? Because the astronauts were trying to rotate the flagpole to plant the American flag on the lunar surface. You see, there is nothing confusing here. Because of the Internet, instead of seeking documents confirming the moon landing, many people are more interested in searching for information that denies human scientific achievement. However, the humans never landed on the moon conspiracy theory does not directly affect the world that much. It only stops at the level of perceptual impact but does not change reality. The more dangerous conspiracy theories often have the power to change social reality at different levels. That could be a large scale, like the whole world, or even a small scale, down to the individual. One of these is the climate change denial conspiracy theory. Climate change, often referred to as global warming, is increasingly becoming the most serious challenge to our planet. This issue is extremely complex, mainly due to human activity constantly releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, causing significant consequences and affecting every aspect of the environment, society, and global economy. Although most climate scientists agree that human activity is exacerbating climate change, a segment of society remains skeptical or rejects this reality, leading to the spread of denial conspiracy theories about the impact of climate change. Climate change conspiracy theory is the rejection of scientific evidence or the questioning of conclusions without a natural basis. Arguments favoring this conspiracy theory contradict the scientific consensus on climate change. Climate change deniers argue that the climate crisis is merely a fabrication and a hoax. They theorize that the climate crisis is woven together, or at least its risks are exaggerated, by vested interest groups aiming to control political and economic power. Climate change deniers are also accusing scientists of manipulating information and violating ethics in their research work. This is a rather effective tactic to reduce confidence in scientific efforts, their results, and the credibility of the scientists themselves. One of the famous scandals known as ClimateGate occurred at the Climate Research Unit of the University of East Anglia in 2009. This happened after a hacker attacked and stole scientists' emails, then spread them across various websites before the Copenhagen Climate Change Summit. Individuals skeptical of climate change accused Professor Phil Jones and his colleagues of data manipulation and climate research documentation. In contrast, supporters of the scientists argued that the email hacking and selective quotation were derogatory and aimed at the content of the research to discredit the scientific evidence of climate change. Although 8 committees conducted investigations into these accusations and published reports, no evidence was found of fraud or misconduct in the field of science. However, climate change skepticism persists and is difficult to completely eliminate. The main weapons used by climate change deniers to attack scientific beliefs include accusations of data, fabrication, and accusations of violating the principle of scientific peer review. Among the countries worldwide, the climate change denial industry is most prevalent in the United States. Since January 2015, the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works has been headed by lobbyist and climate denier Jim Inhofe. He is famous for calling climate change the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, and claimed to expose it in 2015, when he brought a snowball and threw it onto the Senate floor. Organized campaigns to undermine public trust in climate science are linked to conservative economic policies and supported by industrial interests opposing emission regulations. Climate change denial has been associated with fossil fuel lobbyists, industrial advocates, and individualistic libertarian policymakers, most often in the United States. Returning to the main issue, to be clear-headed about this terrible conspiracy theory, we clearly need to answer the most fundamental related questions. First, does climate change exist? Second, does climate change really affect as much as people say? Many people have considered this crisis a hoax by the scientific community to justify their research grants, or even a government conspiracy to control the population. If so, it would have to be one of the most sophisticated deceptions coordinated by numerous governments of countries with large numbers of researchers. Tens of thousands of peer-reviewed and publicly published studies have led to a broad scientific consensus that human-caused climate change is real. The most comprehensive source of information, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, does not operate in secret. IPCC's evidence and investigation methods are publicly available on their official website. The latest 3,500-page report released by the IPCC this year was approved by delegates from 195 countries. The report also lists 234 authors from 66 countries as contributing implementers. This committee was established under a United Nations resolution to provide credible evidence, to defeat the arguments of conspiracy, Theorists. One argument that climate change conspiracy believers often use is that the Earth's climate has always changed over different periods. And even if the Earth is warming, it is entirely natural. Is this argument accurate? Scientists understand that the Earth's climate has long alternated between ice ages and warming periods. Over the past 1 million years, an ice age has occurred approximately every 100,000 years. Is the current temperature increase just another phase in this cycle? The answer is no. The speed, relative abruptness, and global scope of the warming over the past 50 years have made this temperature increase different. Using charts to demonstrate, the IPCC states that global surface temperatures have increased faster since 1970 than during any other 50-year period in at least the last 2,000 years. This information is based on several forms of paleoclimatic data analysis from ice cores, sediments, and tree rings from the pre-industrial revolution era, and temperature data recorded since 1850. As evidence of abnormal warming became undeniable, some skeptics began to admit that the phenomenon was occurring. But they denied the cause was carbon emissions from human consumption of fossil fuels. The IPCC has developed a climate model that measures the impact of different factors. It calculates the degree of warming with and without the influence of human activities. It is clear that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land, the IPCC report concludes this year. However, many people still imply that record cold weather recorded in some places in recent years is evidence against global warming, along with the assumption that even if climate warming is happening, it is not entirely bad. Climate is the average change in weather over time. Therefore, 1 day or 1 week of blizzards is not enough to prove that the average temperature has not increased over many decades. A little global warming could be a good thing. Not many frozen areas of Siberia could become expanded arable land for food sources. However, the melting permafrost in this region will cause many more problems. Experts often express skepticism, participate in joint statements, and write rebutting editorials. But when checking the credentials of many cases, they are mostly not climate science specialists. Among the criteria researchers use to measure the legitimacy of climate claims, one of the most important is consensus. And the consensus on climate change is becoming overwhelmingly dominant. A recent survey by Cornell University of thousands of peer-reviewed climate change studies found that over 99% of authors agree that this negative phenomenon is caused by humans. The rise of the climate change denial conspiracy theory has truly made it doubly difficult for humanity to mitigate the consequences. Therefore, fighting against conspiracy theories that directly affect reality should be given no less importance than crisis issues, especially if it is a type of conspiracy theory that affects each person's life. It needs even more attention. Surely you all know about vaccines, one of the greatest medical achievements of mankind. Vaccines are not a new invention in medicine. They were developed more than 200 years ago in the late 18th century, when smallpox was still a terrifying nightmare, claiming the lives of more than 400,000 Europeans each year. A traditional vaccine is a special biological preparation, derived from pathogenic microorganisms, formulated to ensure the necessary safety for the user, introduced into the human body to stimulate the human immune system to produce active antibodies to prevent disease. About 80% to 95% of vaccinated individuals will develop specific immunity, protecting the body from contracting the disease. Vaccination is the most effective method of disease prevention today, protecting the body from the attack of pathogens. First, Vaccination is to protect oneself, then to protect family, and to protect the social community. The results that vaccines have brought since their invention are undeniable. First of all, there is smallpox. For thousands of years, smallpox was an infectious disease that caused global disaster, with a fatality rate of up to 30%, and those who survived the epidemic were often left with facial scars or lifelong blindness. The disease is caused by the variola virus. Until 1967, the vaccination campaign started by the WHO, lasting about 10 years, truly saved humanity. Although an estimated 300 million people died from smallpox in the 20th century, no one has died from the variola virus since 1978. Next is polio, caused by the polio virus, transmitted through the digestive tract. The virus invades the nervous system, which can cause paralysis or even death within hours. 1 in 200 people infected with polio develops irreversible paralysis, and about 5% to 10% die due to respiratory muscle paralysis. After the global victory over smallpox, the polio eradication program was initiated by the WHO and several donors. The development of the polio vaccine was a major achievement in vaccine history. The number of polio cases worldwide decreased by more than 99% by 2000. Wild polio virus has been eliminated in all countries. If vaccines and vaccination are considered the great medical achievements of the 20th century, then the anti-vaccine conspiracy theory is truly a danger. Firstly, many people believe that vaccines cause autism, but extensive studies involving millions of children worldwide have found no link between vaccines and autism. Other opinions suggest that natural immunity is better than vaccine-induced immunity. While it is true that contracting a disease can sometimes help us build immunity, this is not always the case. Furthermore, it can come with serious health risks. For example, contracting chickenpox can provide lifelong immunity, but it can also lead to serious complications such as skin infections or pneumonia. Meanwhile, vaccines provide similar protection without the risk of severe illness. Is it too much to say that opposing vaccines is almost like opposing humanity? Of course, fighting against harmful conspiracy theories does not mean completely rejecting all previous conspiracy theories. You can certainly keep your belief in the mysteries of ancient Egypt, aliens, or other strange phenomena because they simply fall within the scope of imagination. They create a separate, colorful world within each person. What we need to fight against is the misinformation that drags this world backward. Thank you for your attention to today's program. Primitive's Work says goodbye and see you in the next videos. Wishing everyone a good day with their families.